The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
You're now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Wednesday, August 3rd, 2016. Thank you so much for joining us. You could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you decided to spend some time with us. And I'm glad that you did, but I think also that you'll be glad that you did tonight. Tonight, I'm joined by Professor Eddie Glaude, Jr. He has been on the show before. We spoke at great length about his book, Democracy in Black. But tonight we're talking a little bit more in depth about the election 2016. We'll be talking about his debate on Democracy Now! With Michael Eric Dyson. And then I want to ask him, we'll talk a little bit about the lesser of two evilism between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. But before we go into all of that, I want to welcome him to the show. Professor Glaude, how are you today? And thank you so much for joining us.
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be with you, Doc.
Thank you. It's a pleasure having you here. My audience is excited about the conversation. They've been talking about this interview, this debate, and it was a friendly debate. First of all, the conversation that you had with Michael Eric Dyson last week in Philly, I'm upset because I was in Philly and I didn't get a chance to see or meet either one of you in person, but I'm really ecstatic because it was such a robust conversation in such a short period of time. And you guys covered some very important topics. And I think that you ran into some of the conundrums is the only word I could think of that I'm personally running into. So one, thank you for that conversation, but then two, thank you for coming here to talk about it a little more. And we can just jump right into it. I want to play a small clip of the conversation that you had with Michael Eric Dyson, and we'll use that as a primer for this conversation.
Okay.
Or democracy.
What I'm concerned about, Mike, is what you know as well as I do, is that political scientists have said that black folk are a captured electorate. That is to say, the Republican Party doesn't have to care about what we do, and the Democratic Party every 6 years come into our communities
I'm with you on
and
that.
try to herd us to the polls like we're cattle chewing cud.
I'm with you on that.
And then they have no obligation to deliver on policy.
But
so she shows up in, hold up. She shows up in a church.
Right.
They come to churches. They
Right.
come into our communities. And when we talk about policy, how are you addressing the legacy of
But I'm with you on that.
So but if you're with me on that,
Right.
How is it then that a Democratic candidate can come into our community, come into this moment where all of this suffering, where you and I have laid it out in both of our books, all this suffering is engulfing our communities? When we look at the back of Barack Obama's head, what's going to be behind it are the ruins of black communities, the ruins of the most vulnerable in this country, and then we get business as usual, rebranded, and only because we're afraid of Donald Trump and not understanding our power as the demo.
All right, so that was we picked it up in the middle of the conversation, and you were bringing some serious truth and a rhetorical heat as well as just philosophical truth. I want to ask you in general about the premise that you guys were arguing about, this tension between facing a person like Donald Trump and facing a political party, the corporate wing of the Democratic Party, that has done a disservice to the black community. Where is that threshold for you? Where do you fall in that tension?
Well, as I argued in the conversation with Mike, is that we need to do two things simultaneously. We have to keep Donald Trump out of the White House, and we have to announce that business as usual is unacceptable. And that's hard to do. The fears around Donald Trump are genuine, and they make sense to me. But we can't vote from a place of fear. And so part of what I think we have to do is we have to keep Donald Trump out of the White House, but we also have to continue the necessary work of undermining the neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party, undermining the economic philosophy of neoliberalism that has in so many ways eviscerated the working class in this country, has deepened the misery of the most vulnerable and the most marginal, which disproportionately impact Black and brown communities. And what I find strange, actually, what I find almost deeply hypocritical is a refusal to understand how Hillary Clinton has played a central role, right, in the corporate takeover of the Democratic Party, how her policies have economic philosophy in particular, how her economic philosophy has in so many ways harmed and devastated our communities. And so I'm really skeptical of all of these Black surrogates who think that she's somehow a savior. And so I kept pushing Mike back. And so what I heard by the end of the conversation is that Hillary Clinton is a stopgap measure for him. He doesn't want Donald Trump in office. And I believe that we can't vote from a position of fear, that we have to vote from a position of power.
So, yeah. Okay. So 2 questions come immediately out of that. One is a question and one is an observation. I agree with everything that you said about Hillary Clinton. In fact, I talk about it ad nauseum on this show. I think I'm tired of even hearing myself talk about it, to be honest with you. But tell me, let's start here. I'm going to start with the simple one. Why should we keep Donald Trump out of office? And there's a particular reason I'm asking, because there are some progressives who actually oppose Hillary Clinton so much that they're willing to oppose her even by supporting Donald Trump. Why would you go that far? And if not, why?
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, look, I don't want to downplay the significance of his neo-fascism, right? I don't want to downplay the significance of the way in which he's unleashed kind of a virulent racism and ugliness and the nativism that follows from the policies he embraces, right? I mean, and that is ranging from issues around immigration, ranging to issues around how he understands who constitutes genuine Americans,
right?
And more broadly, and I think an economic philosophy that will more than likely, even as he talks about ending these bad trade deals, I think at the end of the day, the attempt to sell him as a blue-collar billionaire, right, is Orwellian, in terms of the way in which folk are using language. So I think he's dangerous. I think he's dangerous economically. I think he's dangerous politically. I think he's dangerous militarily. And I think if he's elected, the most vulnerable among us, the people on the margins, the people in the shadows, will find themselves in even deeper misery. So I'm clear about that. And I'm clear about that he's a neo-fascist, right? And so as my good friend Cornel West makes a distinction between the catastrophe of neo-fascism and the disaster of neoliberalism.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's a distinction that's helpful in understanding why we got to keep Trump out of office. Because at the end of the day, we want to keep track of the least of these. We want to keep track of their conditions, and we don't want to create a set of circumstances where what is already a difficult situation becomes even worse.
So later on in the interview or the debate, Amy Goodman asked you the question that I have a problem with, that I can't answer myself. She asked you, who do you want to win? And you answered with a negative. You said that you don't want Donald Trump to win, and you couldn't quite bring yourself to say the opposite of that of the what you would expect the other response to be, which is I want Hillary Clinton to win. You weren't ready to say that. I want to ask you this. It's I don't know if there's an answer to it, but I have to ask it. At what point, what could Donald Trump say or do that would make a Professor Glaude say, I want Hillary Clinton to win?
I don't think he could say anything, to be honest with you. I think part of what I was trying to do, at least rhetorically, is to say at any cost, we need to keep Donald Trump out of office. But that doesn't amount to me supporting Hillary Clinton. Right? I mean, de facto, it leads to, I mean, people will say it's a difference that doesn't make a difference. Right? But I'm not endorsing Hillary Clinton. I just can't see myself ever doing that, given who she is, no matter how they try to rebrand her as a change maker. I see her as the poster child, as I said, of the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. She is committed to neoliberalism. She is a hawk. Her foreign policy extends, in my view, the imperial arm of the United States. So what I would say is that the neo-fascism of Trump is such that we need to continue to organize to keep him out of office. And as we're organizing, we have to let Hillary Clinton know that even though she will be elected by default, that it's not because we support her, it's because we resist him, and that we're organizing in such a way and we're voting in such a way to let her know that this is not a vote for her or for her policies, but a vote in some ways for a more radical vision of democracy. Now that sounds confusing, and it sounds like I'm waffling, but I think at the end of the day, Brother Ben, what I'm trying to do is to figure out how do we avoid what happened in 2008. What happened in 2008, you had all of this grassroots energy organizing around the Iraq War. We had hundreds of thousands of Americans getting in the streets. We had millions of people around the country or around the world organizing against the Iraq War. You had folks challenging the economic policies of George W. Bush. If you look at how people were talking about George W. Bush, the rhetoric was as strong as the rhetoric is in some ways around Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And what happened is Barack Obama jumped in front of that energy, and he became the object of the organizing. And people said what we need to do at any cost is to keep a Republican out of office, get him in there, and then we could hold him accountable. And so all the energy was directed to getting him elected, not knowing that once he got elected, there would be active efforts to demobilize, that organizing energy. So instead of us throwing our organizing energy into electing Hillary Clinton, I think we need to organize in such a way, vote strategically, vote down ballot, get people to come in, to turn out in massive numbers, voting down ballot. If you're in the swing state or a battleground state, vote for Hillary Clinton. If you're in a red state, leave the ballot blank or vote your conscience. If you're in a decidedly blue state, do the same, right? And part of what will happen is that organizing effort in order to implement this strategy will then carry over once she's in office, right? And so it won't be the case that now she's in office, now we have to start organizing and mobilizing. No, we're organizing and mobilizing during the election itself.
So that was a strong point of contention in the debate that you had, and the reason I'm focusing on that debate so much, I originally wanted to talk to you just about your article, but when I watched the debate, I realized that it really was a kind of a microcosm of all of the conversations that are going on in progressives and liberal and generally left-leaning circles, which is we disagree vehemently with Hillary Clinton, but we can't allow Donald Trump to get in. But what do we, how do we resolve that tension? There's and quite honestly, I'm struggling with it myself because, it's quite easy. It's much preferred for me to critique Hillary Clinton because I think it's a substantive conversation to be had versus looking at Donald Trump, who is rather buffoonish. And I mean, what are we going to say about Donald Trump? That he's a madman? Well, yeah. But, there's not really a substantive critique that you can give of him. And so it's kind of a balancing act, because there's these absolutes that people buy into, that if I critique Hillary Clinton, that means I'm supporting Donald Trump. If I critique Donald Trump, that means I'm supporting Hillary Clinton. And what you're saying is really a rejection of all of that. And you're saying that, no, we don't want Donald Trump. That doesn't mean we want Hillary Clinton, but we will suffer it to be so with Hillary Clinton, so long as we're organizing properly to ensure that we can hold her accountable in a way that we were not able to hold Barack Obama accountable.
Right. So, some of us will throw our support behind Jill Stein and do the work. And we understand that is a short-term it's a short-term decision and has long-term implications for growing and developing the Green Party, and particularly growing and developing the Green Party around issues of race and racial policy. Some of us will do that work. Some of us will organize around our local issues, right? I always think about the example of what that constellation of organizers in Chicago and throughout Illinois, what they were doing during the Democratic primary. They did not give much attention to who was going to be elected or selected, whether it was Bernie Sanders or or Hillary Clinton, they were focused on getting rid of that district attorney. And they organized and they did it and they succeeded. The same thing happened in Cleveland. So part of what I'm trying to do, Brother Ben, is to get us to see that democratic work, that the work of democracy extends beyond election cycles. When you think about voting, voting is just one thing to do in a constellation of things to do when we talk about being active in a democratic society. And so part of democratic politics involves, at least in my view, right, that grunt work, that grinding work at the local level that we need to be doing in relation to school closings, in relation to voting procedures, in relation to placement of folk who are coming out of prison, to changing predatory policing policy. I mean, these things that impact our community directly in terms of jobs and the like, right? And so we need to be mobilizing around that and understanding that whoever's in the White House will play a role, but what we're doing at the local and county and state levels is just as important. So part of what I'm trying to suggest is that we got to change the center of gravity of black politics in this country. That's the first thing. And two, we have to reject what I take to be one of the more insidious dimensions of neoliberalism, and that is to limit our political imaginations, to make us believe that our only choices are those choices right in front of us, right? And that's what these people who are kind of coming down upon progressives who are skeptical and critical of Hillary Clinton, saying that we're electing Donald Trump, whenever they say that, they're conceding to the terms, I believe, of a certain kind of economic and political philosophy or rationality that leads us to believe that our only choices, our only options are those that are right in front of us. And I think we have to be much bolder. We have to be much more radical in how we approach this thing. Otherwise, nothing changes.
Right. Let's drill down a little further on some of these key things that you're saying. First of all, I want to echo that sentiment of starting on the local level and building there from local movements, local grassroots movements, to let that be the groundswell to make national change instead of top down, go from bottom up. I think that's something that we've missed in black politics and progressive politics in general for quite some time. I want to shift over to Hillary Clinton and Michael Eric Dyson in particular. And this is a question that I want to ask Dr. Dyson, but I haven't been able to get him on my show. But it stood out to me like a sore thumb in this debate because he was putting so much emphasis on the need to support Hillary Clinton to defeat someone like Donald Trump. But it dawned on me that he has been supporting Hillary Clinton since before the primaries even started, before we even knew that Donald Trump was going to be the behemoth that he was, this demon, as he called him, that Michael Eric Dyson referred to him as. So if he already started off, and you may not be able to answer it, but maybe you can just give some insight into the thinking of someone, of a black intellectual who would support Hillary Clinton. If he already started off supporting Hillary Clinton and had already made the justifications for that support for Hillary Clinton, would it change? Would his decision and his argument change now? Because his argument now is, I agree with you, Professor Glaude, on the problems with Hillary Clinton, but we can't pay attention to the problems with Hillary Clinton right now because of Donald Trump. What would his argument have been if it was Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush, someone who is pretty much innocuous or more part and parcel with Hillary Clinton? What are your thoughts on that, if you could speak to that at all?
Well, I don't want to speak for Michael, but what I can say is that I think the initial part of the conversation, we saw a more positive argument for Clinton's candidacy. And that argument took the shape of what she has done, that, for and in and around issues of race, how she's grown in terms of the way in which she's talking about race,
right,
and what she perhaps may be capable of. Unlike President Obama, for whatever reasons that he has chosen to be kind of middle of the road with regards to these issues. So he kind of laid that out. And then he made the shift. And if you remember the transition in the discussion, the transition came by way of an analogy, right? He says you have to play according to the defense.
Yes.
What the defense
Basketball.
gives you.
Right.
Right. What the defense gives you, and what he's saying in that moment is that what we have are the choices in front of us, and with the choices in front of us, we need to go with Hillary Clinton, and that's the transition from a kind of positive argument around her, a positive argument that I think doesn't stand up to serious scrutiny, to the argument that he then held to for the rest of the conversation, the argument that he put forward, and that is we have to keep Trump. Keeping Trump out of the White House is the priority, and by virtue of that, the default position is Hillary Clinton. And if you recall, I kept saying to him that the strategic approach to voting that I was putting forward, and that's a shift in my view. Remember, in Democracy in Fact, I called for a complete blank out.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was thinking it was going to be a choice between Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush. And to
Right.
me, there's no difference that makes a difference between those two. So I've moved a bit given Trump's presence. And so I was saying to Mike, obviously we're in a similar place, but I'm not out here stumping for Clinton.
Right.
Right? Because I fundamentally view her as business as usual. Michael had, I don't want to speak for him, but it seems to be the case that he doesn't hold that view, right? And I think an argument has to be made, that an argument has to be made that Hillary Clinton is somehow some champion of progressive politics. I don't find that convincing at all.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No,
I don't find that convincing at all.
It makes complete and absolute sense, which drives me to the next question or the next problem that we face in black politics specifically, progressive politics more recently, and American politics in general. It's our inability to critique those that we support. And I find far too often that leaders, our intellectual leaders, find themselves what we call caping or defending even President Obama, right? Despite the fact that President Obama has a shaky at best relationship with the black community, we find a lot of leaders incapable of bringing a principled critique against those that we support. And I think this is an extension, the conversation that you had with Dr. Dyson is an extension of that problem, that if we are supporting someone, that means that we cannot critique that someone. And that gives that politician, in my opinion, it gives them a blank check to do whatever the heck they want to do when they get into office. Speak to that a little bit. And then how do you bring critique to someone that you admire and someone that you support? We're not talking about Hillary Clinton in this case. We're not talking about Barack Obama in this case. But let's say your preferred candidate. Are you able to maintain the balance? And if so, how do you maintain the balance of critique as well as support?
Well, I think that I'm going to answer the last question first. I think what you have to keep in mind are the values that animate your political choices, right? So if what animates your political choices is a concern for justice and a love for the most vulnerable, then that's the standard. And the moment you see a candidate that you're supporting in some ways run up against those commitments, then that candidate has to be critiqued. Right? If you see a candidate embracing policies in the name of the expediency of politics or compromise that jeopardize the standing of the most vulnerable in your view, then you have to bring critique to bear. If you see a candidate who's making decisions that you think are unjust, right? Whether it's the decision to bomb innocent people around the world, or whether it's the decision to support fracking, or whether it's the decision to support trade policies like TPP that give unimaginable powers to corporations while decimating workers here in the United States and exploiting workers around the globe, then you know at that point, right, they're embracing policies that run up against your commitments, your fundamental values, right? And that has to be the standard. And then two, it seems to me that what's more important than individuals, right, is a healthy and robust sense of the demos. Right, that is, you have to be committed to democracy, right? And to be committed to democracy is to be committed to a broad and vibrant deliberative space where everyday ordinary people can engage in the exchange of reasons, holding one another accountable as we do the work together, right, to secure the goods that we all cherish, right, so that we can live the lives that we aspire to live and to secure the future for our children. That's the goal. And so if you weren't running around here being a fan, right, as opposed to being committed to democracy, then you're going to be a fan, right? That's how you're going to act. You're not going to have a critical sensibility. So, so part of what I think we need to do, Brother Ben, is to understand ourselves as radical Democrats, small d, and that the real issue here isn't really about individuals or personalities, right? I say this to some folks as I've been speaking around the country, that people have gotten the phenomenon of Bernie Sanders all backwards. They think that Bernie Sanders, right, is the cause of all of this grassroots energy, when in fact all of this grassroots energy is the reason for Bernie Sanders.
Right.
It is when we are mobilized, when we're organizing, when we're doing the work, we produce better choices. We produce better people who will run for office. When we're organized and mobilized. But see, this is the insidious part, and I want to make sure I'm answering all the questions you put on the table. But the insidious dimension of neoliberalism, the economic philosophy, is to eviscerate the working class.
Yeah.
Is to make it such that working people are working so hard to keep their nose above water that they don't have time to stand in solidarity with others. So we're just busy trying to make ends meet, right?
Right.
So we have to challenge, right, an economic philosophy, a political reality, right, that renders us as these separate folk, and imagine a politics that's much more rooted in the lives of everyday ordinary people, together securing a future for themselves and for their children. Now, did I answer the other parts of the question?
Yeah, no, you actually hit them all, and unfortunately you triggered one. I was going to let you go. But you triggered
That's all
one.
right.
Is it all right, kid?
Sure.
This one might last about a 5 minute. One question that might last a little while. Because you alluded to the problem of neoliberalism, the effects that it has on the working class. It keeps us in a perpetual loop, incapable of breaking free to actually stand in solidarity with other people. And then I also reminded of the debate with Michael Eric Dyson, where it actually had some spillover into the fact that none of our hands are clean. That most of us find. Matter of fact, I find myself on a daily basis in a space that is the quintessential example of neoliberalism. We're stuck in this quagmire. What I want to ask is something that I've been thinking on for a little while now, and it has nothing to do with the debate in general, but kind of philosophically, political philosophy. How much of the problem that we oppose, when we oppose neoliberalism, how much of that problem is not just systemic, but inescapable? And when I say inescapable, I don't mean inevitable, but when people realize what it would really mean to tear down neoliberalism, or even more clear, a better example, if to tear down or to end America's empire abroad, and this forceful hand that we use to bring quote unquote peace, or at a minimum, we bring a stability that's familiar to America and familiar to our companies to be able to go and spread globalism and capitalism abroad. But if we really consider the cost of ending that, would people like you and me and others who are critical of this system really be able to absorb what that really means and what that really looks like to end empire abroad, to bring an end or an adjustment to neoliberalism? It's a really big question, but I know you can handle it.
It's a difficult question. I mean, look, there's no pure space from which to engage in this work. Right. I mean, we're all implicated in this. And, Mike talked about Cory Booker blurbing my book being published by Crown as an indication of my own complicity. And it's important for us to understand how we are all shaped and formed and find ourselves in the circuitry of neoliberalism, so that you can't be self-righteous in the critique. Right. But that's like saying that, because we all sin, that we shouldn't critique sin. Right, to put it in Christian terms, right?
Yeah, I had a little Christian jump right there. I felt that one, Doc. I felt that one.
Right, I mean, it makes no sense. We're all sinners, so we shouldn't say anything about sin. That makes no sense to me, right? Part of what we have to do is put forward an ideal an ideal of the best set of arrangements, the best society that allows people not only to dream dreams, but to pursue those dreams, to set that ideal and let it be the regulative ideal towards which we strive, understanding that we're going to fall short for a variety of reasons. Now, that said, it seems to me this is the point. There's nothing more comfortable than the familiar. And in moments of crisis, in moments of deep fear, we often find ourselves running back to the comfort of the familiar. But if the familiar is wrought with all sorts of evils, and that's no other way to put it, Brother Ben, if it's characterized by all sorts of evils, and we have an opportunity that emerges precisely because the crisis that has come to pass as a result of the contradictions of capital. The contradictions of capital have made themselves manifest in such a way that it has given us an opportunity, an opening. I don't know, it may be fugitive, but it's an opening for us to do work. And in this moment, it requires of us the courage, the virtue of courage to strike the blow for democratic change. But if we succumb to the vice of fear, then business as usual is secure. Now, that said, it requires all prophetic action is based on an imaginative leap to see the as yet in relation to the horrors of now. And that means we have to take that leap. And if we don't, then we seal our fates. Now, that's not saying that you and I are comfortable, that the world that we live in, for the world that my child has become an adult in and is living in, that the instability that shift, that transformation will bring won't be unsettling, won't make us afraid. But we do it in the name of a better world. And what people who are committed, I'm sorry to go on so long here.
Go for it.
But people who are committed to the status quo, folks who are committed to the current arrangements that exploit and abuse everyday ordinary people, they are banking their all that you and I and others are too afraid to take the leap. That we are too afraid to imagine otherwise. And so if we don't embrace the democratic virtue of courage in a moment of possibility, then we succumb to the vice of fear. And I reject that wholeheartedly.
So I think that this is perfect timing with the question that just came from our chat room on YouTube. What if that destruction or that reversal or moderation of neoliberalism was dependent upon someone let me start that over again. What if achieving the goal of correcting the problems of neoliberalism was dependent upon us keeping Hillary Clinton out of office and using this exact Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump 2016 scenario? Some in the chat room, it's come that people believe that Hillary Clinton is the greater threat because she is the quintessential neoliberal in this election. What if, then that's a big what if, but what if keeping her out is actually part of the solution?
Well, that only holds if we don't understand the power of our organizing. Right. So if one could say, if one is concerned really about, if we're all concerned about the working poor and the most vulnerable, the most marginal, that Donald Trump poses a particular kind of threat to their circumstance, that he poses a particular kind of threat to the world. And we can say at the same time that we make that claim, that so does Hillary Clinton, insofar as she represents the status quo, that so far as she represents business as usual. But if we're organizing, right, and mobilizing, then we can put, how can James Baldwin, and I'm paraphrasing him here, says that his vote is kind of like a stopgap measure, right, just to buy me some time. right? In some ways, that we can actually organize and mobilize to bring pressure to bear, to continue to bring pressure to bear on the current state of affairs. So I'm not of the belief that if we elect her, right, it will seal our fates. And I'm not of the belief that if we elect Donald Trump, right, it's the apocalypse. What I'm more interested in is what we're doing.
Right.
What we're doing in the context of this election cycle. And that to me means that we're cultivating a radical democratic vision among the demos, right? And we're doing that through the election cycle because it garners all this attention at this point. Now, look, let me say this really quickly, Ben. I'm very much aware that it's on the Democrats' watch that the crime bill was passed. It's on the Democrats' watch that welfare reform was passed. It's on the Democrats' watch that they dismantled Glass-Steagall. It's on the Democrats. I mean, we can just go on and on and on, right? And I think Tom Frank has made a compelling argument about the state of the current state of the Democratic Party. We know that. That's why we have to organize and mobilize, and that's why we can't buy into this nonsense that people are trying to sell about her as some progressive champion.
Absolutely the case. Professor Eddie Glaude, thank you so much for joining me. I would love to keep you longer, but I think we have exhausted that portion of the conversation. Just promise me I can get you back again next time.
Anytime, man. I love talking with you, Doc.
It's always a pleasure. 857-600-. Well, actually, before I open the phone lines, Dr. Glaude, I know everyone knows you. You are extremely popular in my circles, but it is a tradition. Would you please tell everyone how to get up with you?
Sure. You can contact me at my email, esglaude@princeton.edu. On Twitter, I'm at esglaude. And, via Facebook. Just check me out.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining me, Professor.
Hey, man, I appreciate you. Take care.
You too now. 857-600-0518 is the number to call to join the conversation. We covered a lot of ground in that. And we actually answer some of the questions that I'm going to pose to you in a minute with regard to Donald Trump. But before I jump into all that, I want to give you a chance to chime in. So the phone lines are open. And thanks again to Professor Glaude. It is always a pleasure to speak with him and to actually just to hear his debate. If you haven't heard the entire debate with he and Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, I really recommend that you go over there and take a listen to it, because it is, if you like my show at all, it's like my show on steroids, the top performance enhancing steroids you could possibly ever get. So definitely go check that out on Democracy Now! Also want to thank all of our patrons, everyone who became a patron overnight. Well, look at that. I don't have anyone to thank today. I don't have any new patrons to thank. I was going to say the same names twice, but I realized I've already thanked Sebastian and I've already thanked Denise, which means this is the perfect opportunity for someone like you to jump on patreon.com/the BPD show and become a supporter of the Benjamin Dixon Show, because I don't think there should be a night. I mean, we're bringing you conversations like this. Absolutely. There shouldn't be a night where we're not able to thank our newest patrons. But I do thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you click the follow button and share, like, and subscribe. If you can't donate, the best thing that you can do is to share, like, and subscribe. All right, let's take this caller, and then we're going to talk about Donald Trump. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hello?
Yep, this is you. You're already live on the air.
Oh, hi. Hi. My name is Claire. I actually asked this in the chat room, but I've been watching this segment and from the doctor, I mean, I can't argue against any of it, but I guess my biggest concern when it comes to this whole idea of Hillary versus Trump is that I mean, people talk about how Trump is this neo-fascist and, nobody knows what he's going to do. And, whereas Hillary, we all know what she's going to do. I mean, she's very predictable in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, I don't know. But, I mean, Trump, it seems to me, is, I mean, his interest, I mean, when I think about, like, why would he want to blow things up, you know? I mean,
ego is a hell of a drug, man. Ego does.
Yeah.
People have gone to war for less things than ego, and he is quite the narcissist. So, I mean, as to why he would want to, it depends on how he feels on that day. And I don't say that to fearmonger about Trump, but Trump is not really a stable actor. He's not a rational actor. And the only thing that I think is good about Hillary Clinton is the fact that, I mean, okay, I'm being hyperbolic. There are other things that are good about her, but the only thing good that I will cop to on live on air is the fact that she is consistent and that she is steady and she is very predictable. And in this conversation, not saying that you have to vote for her, because I'm not voting for her. I'm in Massachusetts. I don't have to. I'm lucky. I can vote for Jill Stein. But in the conversation between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, when you talk about who's going to be a stable, rational actor on the international stage, it's certainly more likely to be Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, she's very predictable. It's true.
And some of that, some of the things that we can predict that she's going to do are not good things, or not things that I agree with. But I'm pretty. If I had to bet the stability of the world on it, I would bet that Hillary Clinton would be more stabilizing than Donald Trump. And that's just from everything that I know through what I've studied in international relations theory. Donald Trump is not a stable actor. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And that may not be reason enough for you to vote for her, because it's not. It's getting close, though. I'm gonna. Donald Trump is treading into some territories that really makes me question how long could I keep not supporting Hillary Clinton, because I've been pretty consistent. I'm like, there's pretty much nothing that I agree with her on when we get to the details. The devil is in the details, right? So she stands for, name an issue that she stands for. As soon as you go into the details of it, there's some problems from a progressive perspective. So there's a lot that I disagree with her on, and I've been pretty consistent about that. But Donald J. Trump is treading into some territories that I didn't think he would tread. Actually, instead of me just talking about it, let me play a clip of. Well, two things. I have to talk about this holistically, and then I'll take this caller. I want to play a clip from Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough on MSNBC. I'm going to discuss it from a journalistic perspective because the clip is problematic from a journalistic perspective. But then I'm also going to talk about the implications of what he said. So let's listen in.
Several months ago, a foreign policy expert on the international level went to advise Donald Trump, and 3 times he asked about the use of nuclear weapons. 3 times he asked, at one point, if we have them, why can't we use them? That's one of the reasons why he just doesn't have foreign policy experts around.
Trump asked 3 times.
3 times in an hour briefing, why can't we use nuclear weapons?
All right, so let me talk journalistic wise first, because that's the first thing that jumped off the pages to me, is that Joe Scarborough is floating a tremendous accusation. I mean, it is a huge accusation against Donald Trump without any reference to a source, any way that we can verify it. In a sense, this is yellow journalism at its finest. Number 2, he said several months ago, someone told him this. If this happened several months ago and then someone legitimately told you this, how in God's green earth could you consider yourself a journalist and sit on that story for several months? it's extremely problematic how Joe Scarborough proposed this or introduced this into the national conversation. But the fact of the matter is he introduced it into the national conversation, and it has taken hold. It has been quite the conversation piece in political circles all day long. It's probably a 24-hour news cycle. However, it pushes you to the point where you have to ask yourself, what if Donald Trump actually holds this position or asked that question and was so fascinated or so disturbed about the fact that we have nuclear weapons, but we don't use nuclear weapons. And the further extension of the problem is the fact that this is completely plausible. This is completely plausible. This is not outside of the realm of possibilities for something Donald Trump would say. When you consider this is not the first time he's alluded to using nuclear weapons in the Middle East in particular, when he's talked about NATO and referencing Article 5 of NATO and not holding on to our responsibility and our commitments that we made to NATO. Something like this that Joe Scarborough has accused Donald Trump of is not outside of the realm of possibilities. So since it's not outside of the realm of possibilities, it is absolutely something that we have to take into consideration and something that we can't just casually dismiss. And because of that, it opens up an entire world of problems on the international stage that are I don't want to sound too hyperbolic, but they are the quintessential example of a destabilizing factor or an irrational actor. Donald Trump talking in this manner, even in private, is akin to a Kim Jong-un, right? Someone who is an irrational actor, someone that we cannot predict, someone that we cannot make predictions based upon or have expectations. We don't know what that type of actor would do if they are in charge of a nuclear arsenal, or even if they're just in charge of the strongest military in the world. And I can't emphasize enough for me personally, because of my training, my background, international relations, international security, and the importance of predictability, the importance of our contracts, pacta sunt servanda, the agreements must be kept. This is the very fundamental basis of our entire international system. And to have a person who is potentially the next president of the United States, the quote unquote leader of the free world, with a tens of thousands of nuclear weapons at his disposal, or, I don't know the number, but it's in the tens of thousands, right? To have a person coming into the world stage that casually dismisses our responsibility to our treaty with NATO, or casually dismisses or casually floats the idea of using nuclear weapons in a world where there is a agreement of mutually assured destruction, right? There is the underlying principle that the reason we have our nuclear weapons and the reason we don't use our nuclear weapons is because if we do use our nuclear weapons, it is a guaranteed destruction of the entire planet, without question. And even more so than that is the implications of nations that don't have what this means to nations that don't have nuclear weapons. Probably more so important than nuclear armed nations. If they hear the president of and to be sure, let me start here. To be sure, the words of the president of the United States carry significant weight in the international system. All day long, I've had people say, yeah, but there are protocols in place to prevent this from happening. Yeah, the protocol is that there has to be a second person to confirm the actual launch or to approve the actual launch. That's pretty much the protocol, right? Other than that, who's going to, what safety features are there to prevent a madman like Trump from launching? But let's take a step back from him actually using nuclear weapons. Transmitting in the international conversation, in the international dialogue between nations, the willingness to use weapons in a casual fashion destabilizes the entire international community. Because suddenly you have nations who are vulnerable because they don't have any type of nuclear defense because they have signed on to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, right? They have agreed to not seek nuclear weapons. So what happens in a destabilized world when you have a Donald Trump just casually saying, well, we might use nuclear weapons. Why can't we use them? Why do we make them? Why do we make them if we can't use them? Having an actor on the international stage in charge of tens of thousands of nuclear weapons casually floats something like that. Sends warnings to people who do not have nuclear weapons, and it tells them we need to defend ourselves because we're no longer in a world where we are assured that no one is going to use nuclear weapons. Now, this entire conversation is based on a quote from Joe Scarborough that he did not source, that he did not give us a citation or a reference on, and that he sat on for months. So it's quite possible that Joe Scarborough is just full of shit and trying to make a good story better, right? Let's not negate that possibility. But if you're going to consider that possibility, you must also consider, knowing the nature of Donald Trump, that this is something that is plausible, that is within his realm of possibilities. And if this is something that is possible within the realm of his possibilities, he is crossing over into something that I consider personally too dangerous to allow him to get in power. I am not concerned or even scared of the racism that Donald Trump represents or the people he fosters. I'm not. I talk about it because it bothers me, but it's not something for me to say, oh, Donald Trump is the boogeyman. You know why? Because I'm familiar with the racism that Donald Trump fosters. It's been here in America all along. So that's not something for me to say, oh, God, it's the end of the world because Donald Trump's a racist. No. I'm not concerned, I guess, out of a point of privilege about I don't think that he's the devil, or I won't fearmonger over him building a wall or his misogyny or his xenophobia, his homophobia, and all the things that he fosters. All those things that we talk about on a regular basis that are kind of fodder for the media. All those things, they don't really bother me because they're here. They are a part of America. And they're the very reason Donald Trump is even the nominee, because that is a part of America. But what's not a part of America is a precedent being set that we can completely disregard over 60 years of international norms. Actually, hell, 70. We're getting close to 70 years now. Almost 70 years of international norms around nuclear non-proliferation. Well, that was actually a little later, but the use of nuclear weapons, the NATO, the agreement around Article 5. You know, he's treading into territories that could legitimately destabilize the global order. And when I say the global order, I'm talking about the stability that we have. And you could debate me all day on proxy wars, you know, Afghanistan, the destabilized nature of the Middle East. You could argue, you know, all there are wars. There are going to be conflicts. I got it. I get it. But we have a global order that has been consistent and has been stable since the end of World War II, post World War II. And Donald Trump, if he said this, and again, I have to take a pause because it's journalism that I don't agree with from Joe Scarborough, but it does not fall outside of the realm of possibilities of Donald Trump. If he said this, then that is something that none of us have ever seen. And I put it like this to a friend earlier today. It's like, you know, we benefit, every one of us, the fact that you're able to watch my broadcast right now. Whether we like it or not, it benefits from the order and the stability that was set after World War II. Don't take my word for it. Go talk to all of the scholars that agree with me or that I agree with them because I read their work, right? Go talk to them. We benefit from this order that yes, there are wars. Yes, there's a problem with the way we maintain this order. Yes, we have a problem with how we destabilize the Middle East, but that destabilized Middle East is actually a part of the global order. It's a part of it's something that we can set our clock to. It's something that we can predict. It is a part of our world structure, our global society that we have had since post-World War II. And dealing with somebody like Donald Trump and the possibility of him saying this introduces a destabilizing force in the international community that we have never seen from a sitting American president. That to me that gives me pause. That gives me a moment to say, okay, Donald Trump is something different. Donald Trump is something that is unhinged, yes. Racist, yes. But destabilizing, actually, I didn't even finish my last thought. We benefit from this order, whether you agree with it or not, or know it or not. There is an order of stability in the international norms, in the international community, rather, that we benefit from, and that gives us the ability to build our communities, our nation, to build our technology, to build the internet, to build our shows, to tweet, to do all the things that we enjoy every single day. It is built on the back of the international order that was structured in post-World War II. It also gives us the ability to debate back and forth about how horrible Hillary Clinton is, or how horrible, whoever is running for president. It gives us that stability. We benefit. We can do it because we're not at a perpetual state of anarchy and chaos and war. Donald Trump, if he said this, which is not outside the realm of possibilities, actually introduces a destabilizing factor in the international community that would remove our ability to talk about how that potentially could remove the ability to talk about how ridiculous neoliberalism is and how much we disagree with Hillary Clinton. I probably can do an entire lecture on that for at least 4 hours, but the sentiment is there, and it rings very true to me. It rings very, very true that casually saying that we don't have to keep Article 5, casually saying that we can use nuclear weapons really changes the game. All right. I've got 2 minutes, and I've had a caller on hold. Let's see. Can I get this caller, and then we'll get out of here. Caller, you're live on the air. Name, comment, and or question.
Hey, Ben, it's Bryce.
Hey, Bryce. How's it going, man? Yeah, you're live.
Good. Well, the whole Trump thing and the nuclear weapons thing, obviously, it's something that's very interesting, not even interesting, but it's like wild.
Yeah.
And like I said, we don't know if it's true, we don't know if it's false. It's a lot,
but it's possible.
Unpredictably,
possible.
And because this whole law and order candidate thing, and just they want to get back to a time where they had I guess things a certain way. It's just like wow, but I guess we'll see what happens. And
I got 30 seconds, Bryce.
He just did this.
No, I was saying, I got 30 seconds. Give it to me.
But that doesn't mean my main point. Just hopefully that doesn't come to fruition, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much for your call. And actually, you reminded me of something. Actually, not you. The chat. Just take a peek at chat. Here's the last thing. I lied. I'm almost done. I just need about 2 more minutes. One minute. I can do it in 1 minute. We can't be so dedicated to our opposition to Hillary Clinton that we excuse the ridiculousness of Donald Trump. Because I think a lot of people really suffer from this false dichotomy, this false choice that if you expose Donald Trump, you support Hillary Clinton. If you expose Hillary Clinton, you support Donald Trump. No, we cannot be. I'm not going to be so committed because quite honestly, the things that we're talking about, there are some serious problems with Donald Trump that we should discuss. It would be less than journalism if we ignored it. It would be less than sensible if we ignored it. But I find so often people rush to defend Donald Trump because of fear that it supports Hillary Clinton. That is asinine. That is ridiculous. Unless you are just a supporter for Donald Trump, we must be able to simultaneously critique people we agree with and critique people we disagree with. And if we disagree with both, that doesn't mean our critique is supporting the other. We can't live in that absolute, because what we do is we become so adept to criticizing and attacking one group while giving a pass and cover to another. And there is absolutely nothing about the Republican platform that should be given cover to. We should, as progressives, simultaneously critique Hillary Clinton as well as the Republican Party. But I have a feeling that a lot of people cannot handle both of those at the same time, because they hate hearing critiques of Donald Trump because they feel like it's somehow supporting Hillary Clinton. Can we walk and chew gum at the same time? We absolutely have to, because we cannot become surrogates, by de facto surrogates for Donald Trump, by always defending him for fear of somehow supporting a candidate like Hillary Clinton, who we all generally disagree with. It does not work like that. And what it does is it prepares us to be the masterful critics of neoliberalism, while giving a pass to neoliberalism that's in the Republican Party, and a pass to neo-fascism that is being birthed in the Republican Party vis-a-vis Donald Trump. It is our responsibility to do both.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.